As someone who has been watching Fire Force Season 3 and Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3 on a weekly basis, I started to notice something that has bothered me for quite a while. And that is, anime fans at this point in time are extremely spoiled. Why do I say that? Well, the past couple of weeks, I've been paying attention to Fire Force as a manga reader of the series. And if you're familiar with Fire Force, then you know that a fight that was pretty much on the chopping block to being adapted was the fight that everyone has been talking about for years, and that is Arthur versus Dragon. The time finally arrived and the episode aired, and it was a good episode. Not anything mind-blowing, unfortunately, which it absolutely deserved, but it was a good episode all things considered. The pacing of Fire Force Season 3 has not been the greatest, and yet the animators were able to cook something that still felt enjoyable to watch. However, if you go to Twitter, you genuinely would believe that this episode had nothing going for it whatsoever, like at all. Now, of course, it can't really be denied that this fight in particular was hyped to high heavens, and if you've read the manga and if you have seen this fight, then you know why that is. It's genuinely one of the best fights, if not the best fight in the entirety of Fire Force manga. So an anime adaptation of this fight, in an ideal world, it would be absolutely bombastic and mind-blowing when it comes to its animation, but that's not the reality though. And this is where the title of this video comes in, because truly I believe that when you have series like Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3 airing at the same time, for example, people have this weird mindset mentality that if an episode of an anime or even an entire season isn't filled with Sakuga moments, then it's a bad adaptation. And I didn't think this in particular needed to be said, but Sakuga in just the mere concept of just good animation isn't everything for an anime. There's other aspects and layers to this, whether it is the compositing, the audio and visual effects, how things are cut, how scenes transition from one to the other. All of these things matter. Just because you have good fluid animation on screen doesn't mean that all of a sudden it's just a good adaptation just for that alone. And if that isn't present, then it's just all dog shit. Like, what are we talking about? The biggest example of this is pretty much One Punch Man Season 3. There were a few moments in that season that felt like a lightning in a bottle moments where animation and Sakuga actually were present, riddled with absolute terrible direction and just a complete utter mess of an adaptation overall. But even with those good animated moments, it didn't justify or basically left a shitty taste in your mouth of essentially what happened with One Punch Man's adaptation. Arthur vs. Dragon episode did not suffer from any weird cuts as far as like how scenes were spliced and it was very awkward. It didn't suffer from absolutely like just jarring, and I'm saying extremely jarring compositing or weird character design drawings that just fell off as you were like none of that was present whatsoever. Not to say that the episode was perfect, because it wasn't, but the difference between these two shows in particular is fucking outrageously massive. I understand that when you have shows like Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3 airing at the same time as Fire Force Season 3, I can understand people's perception of what an episode of anime should be like be skewed to what is happening at the time, but shows like Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3 are the exception, not the rule. What I'm trying to get across isn't the idea that people should, accept or respect for less, but what I am saying is that realistic expectations should be had for anime adaptations. Ignoring the specific circumstances and the intentions behind specific anime adaptations doesn't help anybody. The moment Fire Force decided to have a third season be the final one that only has 2 cores and that is supposed to adapt close to 100 chapters was the moment that people should have immediately saw this and went, yeah, we should not point at this. And then also point at Jujutsu Kaisen, an anime adaptation that is clearly taking its time, adding a bunch of stuff when it comes to animation with its fights, and basically use these two as a point of comparison. It doesn't make sense. It's also not fair to the animators of Fire Force in this situation because these people are basically working with an extremely fast pacing. They can do so much as far as animating what is being adapted to the point where they would be taking too long. They literally are going with a TV time in Japan. And I feel like a lot of people seem to forget this fact. And at that point, that's not the fault of anime studios because they don't get to decide the amount of episodes they get to work on an anime. That's on the production committees. I don't want the idea to be that you can't criticize Fire Force in this particular instance, or that Fire Force is perfect or anything of the sort, because there is clearly issues with Fire Force Season 3 altogether, but I believe people are going about the topic and their critiques as far as how the episode of Arthur vs. Dragon looked like completely and entirely wrong. Adaptations should be judged by how they adapted the material, not whether the anime had Sakuga or not. Sakuga isn't everything. Like, could you imagine trying to use Sakuga as a determining factor of whether an anime adaptation is good or not? Like, so many rom-coms, comedies, you name it, fucking slice of life series would be considered dog shit by this standard. It is absolutely mind-numbing. All in all, the point of this video isn't to particularly shut down criticism of Fire Force or just any other anime that might not be a Sakuga fest in particular, but what I am trying to get across is the fact that people have been spoiled to the degree where they look at shows like Jujutsu Kaisen and point to it as the standard, when that's always been the exception. People having higher standards is never a bad thing, but expectations should always be maintained at realistic levels, and people should accurately judge on what they're talking about. And using one out of the many aspects of an anime as a determining factor of whether the anime is good or not just isn't accurate. But that's just my opinion on that. I want to know what you guys think about this topic in the comment section down below, as I'm very interested in what you guys have to say. If you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate hitting the like and subscribing to the channel. I would really appreciate that. And with that, hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the day wherever you are. See you guys in the next one.